Welcome to the Wireless LAN News Desk on January 18th, 2019. My name is Tom Carpenter. I'm the CTO at CWNP. And this week in the news, we're talking about 802.11ax. There is an article available at networkworld.com titled 5 Steps to Get Ready for 802.11ax. Now, this is actually based on information from Aruba and a webinar that Aruba actually makes available. You can find the webinar at Bright Talk right here. So this is the location you can go to in order to actually view the webinar. The webinar goes into detail for about an hour about these 5 steps. Now, there are some things in these 5 steps that I really appreciate because there's some practical advice rather than just being marketing hype. So when we go down to the actual 5 steps, the first step is when we move to 802.11ax, do we need to upgrade our switches? The major point they make is not about throughput, but about power. And they indicate that if you want all of the features of particularly Aruba's 510 series APs, then you need the extra power that 802.3bt provides. Because the 30 watts of power provided by older PoE standards is not sufficient to power the Bluetooth as well as both Wi-Fi radios and all of the features and capabilities of the device. So the focus is not as much on throughput as it is on actual power of the AP, which I think is a very fair argument. If someone does want all of the features of the AP, they need the extra power that newer switches would provide. Generally speaking, if you go to those newer enterprise switches, you're also going to be going to higher throughput switches, at least 2.5 gigabits, but probably even higher. So I think this is a valid argument, but I do want to pause for a moment and talk a little bit about data rates in 802.11ax. And I think one of the best ways to do that is let's take a look at a consumer device here at Amazon. This is the TP-Link Archer AX6000. And notice they market it as an 8-stream smart Wi-Fi router. Okay, 8 streams. Well, what do they actually mean by that? When we come down here and look at the data rates, we see that it's 1,148 megabits per second in 2.4 gigahertz and 4,804 megabits per second in 5 gigahertz. Well, wait a minute. 8 streams in 11ax would be more than that. How do we know? Well, if we look at the draft, you can see in table 28-103 that for high efficiency MCSs with non-OFDMA, 160 and 80 plus 80 megahertz, in other words, the widest channel, and non-OFDMA, so we're not talking about multi-users here, we're talking about a single device talking to the AP or the AP talking to a single device. And the key is, notice I'm looking at the table for 4 as the number of spatial streams. And you can see that the highest data rate is 4803.9. So they've rounded up on the Amazon site with the marketing information, but this is where that number comes from. So what are we talking about? We're clearly talking about a 4-stream radio. Now, if we go back over to Amazon, they tell us that in the marketing literature. So when we go to another graphic here at Amazon, you can see blazing Wi-Fi up to 6 gigabits per second. How is that? Well, because we're combining 5 and 2.4. So once again, this marketing speak that takes 2 different bands, which no single device is going to be connected to at the same time, combines them together and acts like you get that speed out of a connection. But that's actually your aggregate speed. It should say blazing aggregate Wi-Fi speeds up to 6 gigabits per second. But at any rate, notice they do say in 5 gigahertz, it's 4 streams. And in 2.4, it's 4 streams, giving us a total of 8 streams. So we're not going to be seeing 8-stream 802.11ax stuff anytime soon, which means we're not going to see the 11 megabits per second, the highest rate that we could get, right? If we go back to the draft and we go on down to our 8-stream table, you can see here that 160 megahertz, 8 streams, we're dealing with 9,607.8 megabits per second, or roughly 9.5 gigabits per second. And that is the last table provided. When you're looking at the OFDMA communications, they're going to be a little bit different, obviously. So right here, we're simply looking at the different communications that are available for different spatial streams when you're using OFDMA. And when we go through and we get up to our 4 spatial streams here, we see basically 250 megabits per second here with 106 tone resource units. But if we go on up to 8 spatial streams, then we see with 106 tones, we can get 500 megabits per second per device that's communicating. So that's actual 802.11ax stuff. So when we talk about the efficiency features that 802.11ax brings, we're really talking about using resource units, which is down the road because we need 11ax clients. There's news out that the iPhone that's released later in 2019 may very well support 802.11ax. That's fine. Right now, we don't have it. And so even if I did implement some of these enterprise 11ax APs that are coming out, I'm not immediately going to reap the rewards of it. All my clients are 11AC. And at this point, I'm going to get 11AC connections to those APs. Once I have the capability to connect AX clients, though, I can begin to get that benefit. And it is possible that I could go above 1 gigabits per second. So even though I believe Aruba made the right choice and didn't focus on throughput so much, throughput is going to become a factor eventually with 11ax because we're going to have the capability to have wireless speeds that will more than saturate a 1 gigabit per second connection on the back end. Now, they go on here in the article to talk about security, WPA3 being included, energy, how to deal with the power consumption of these devices, IoT, an interesting statistic here, 74% of IoT use cases are Zigbee, Bluetooth, and Wi-Fi. So that covers the majority of IoT devices, which is good to know that as you research IoT, that's your primary area of focus, though there are other technologies as well. And do you have the flexibility of management in the cloud? Of course, that's a marketing part for Aruba's specific cloud management capabilities, and many other vendors offer that as well. So the big point here that I want to really drive home is that, first of all, 802.11ax devices are often going to drive the need for upgrades in your switching infrastructure because of power. And down the road, we're going to see the need for faster links on the back end. It's going to become a real issue. That's right. You heard me say it. I've argued vehemently against that being a motivating factor in upgrading switches for 11AC. But for 11ax, I would say anywhere from 18 to 24 months down the road, it's going to become a big issue if we're trying to run them on 1 gigabit per second links. Well, thank you for joining me for the Wireless LAN News Desk today. That's all we have for this week, and I will see you next week right here on the Wireless LAN News Desk.